Hello, welcome to Strictly Money at the News Forum, where all voices matter. I'm your host, Sejal Patel. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly shone a light on the increasing gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's also highlighted the importance of charities in our country. However, charitable organizations have also struggled to raise funds for important causes despite an increased need for their services. The latest report from Canada Helps revealed that while Canadians donated 7% more this year compared to last year, donations are far below pre-pandemic levels, even though 42% of charities are not able to meet the current level of demands. Jacob O'Connor is the Senior Vice President of Engagement at Canada Helps, and he joins me now to discuss the impact the pandemic has had on charitable giving and the work his organization is doing to support those in need. Jacob, it's great to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me, Sejal. Happy to be here.
So before we get into the stats and trends, tell us about Canada Helps, what it is and its mission.
Sure, yeah. So Canada Helps is first and foremost a registered charitable foundation, and we are a technology organization that looks to increase giving in Canada through technology. So we offer a one-stop shop where Canadians can go to at canadahelps.org and search for, donate to, or fundraise on behalf of any charity in Canada and instantly get a tax receipt. We also build easy-to-use and effective online fundraising technology for charities as well.
Okay. So I mentioned a few statistics, Jacob, earlier. What are some of the big shifts that you've seen because of the pandemic? And maybe we can talk about first the amount of charitable giving.
Yeah. This is a great question. And I think before diving into the giving aspect, just to paint a picture. So at the beginning of the pandemic, back in March 2020, what we saw is that overnight charities had to drop all of their traditional methods of fundraising. Right. So all in-person fundraising events, for our local theaters, they were not able to have any shows, ticket sales. So there was a big chunk of revenue that was lost overnight, and charities had to pivot. In 2020, what we saw in the first year of the pandemic was a 10% decrease in overall donations because of these lost revenue streams. At the same time, what we've seen, and this was a really big bright spot, was a huge lift in online giving. So over 100% increase in online giving last year in 2020. What we're seeing this year is as Canadians, we've been able to keep that level up. And so we've actually seen year to date thus far a 7% increase over last year's online giving levels. But I just have to say that we're heading into these last few weeks of the year, and from Giving Tuesday, which fell at the end of November this year, up until December 31st is where we see about 30% of giving take place.
All right. In terms of the type of funds that got the donation over a pandemic, where did you see that? I have to assume because of job losses, rise in inflation is a big theme this year. Is it food banks? Is it healthcare?
Yeah, that's great guesses. So what we've seen overwhelmingly, and we see this time and time again with Canadians, very generous country, very generous people, and we respond. And so throughout the pandemic, we've seen huge increases in donations made to social services organizations like food banks, like homeless shelters, and also those health organizations that you mentioned, all of our hospital foundations and folks dealing on the front lines of the pandemic. But we have also seen increases in donations to, actually the largest increase that we saw in 2020 was to Indigenous serving organizations. And this was also a response to the social justice movements that began in 2020 and have continued to move on into 2021.